Welcome to a cup of conversation on BRT2 TV. My name is John Ghazi, and this week in the studio I am lucky to have an old friend of mine. He is a familiar face on BRT TV and also on the radio, and his name is Fevzi Hüssein, and Fevzi is here on a flying visit, a very short visit to the TRNC to visit his family, and he has kindly taken time out of his trip to join us in the BRTK studios to talk about a very, very important, very sensitive subject. And in fact, we're talking about the Tottenham Park Cemetery in Edmonton, London, and this is something that is very, very important, and maybe you viewers out there can support Fevzi's cause. So we'll find out more about this on today's Cup of Conversation. First of all, Fevzi, welcome to the programme once again. Thank you, John, for having me on again. It's a pleasure. You are a great guy to chat with and to interview, and you have always something important to share with our viewers. The first time we met years ago, you were here under the banner of Embargoed, right, which is a very important group fighting for the rights of the Turkish Cypriots. Now, you are here to talk about something very serious, but before we talk about the subject, let's find out more about you. You are obviously a Turkish Cypriot living in London. Were you born in the UK? I was actually born in Edmonton at a North Middlesex hospital. And lived in Tottenham, but now living near Wimbledon in Morden, where I work. I work for a trade union called the Communication Workers Union as a policy advisor. It's a big trade union. We've got 190,000 members, and my area of work specialises in discrimination and equality within the workplace. Right. In fact, I think you are probably the best qualified person to deal with the issues that you are dealing with, because you are so much into human rights, equality, whether it's for Turkish Cypriots or for any human being on the planet. And so you are always, I see that you are quite active on Facebook and always involved with quite sensitive issues. And today's issue is about the Tottenham Park Cemetery in Edmonton. Now, this cemetery is quite an old cemetery, and over the most recent years, a cemetery used mainly by Muslims, and especially Turkish Cypriots. Is that right? Correct. The cemetery actually dates back to 1912 when it was first opened, and it was, back then, it was a paupers cemetery. And as was common practice in those days, when people were buried, there was many individuals placed into one grave, hence the terminology around paupers graves. Mm-hmm. And as time progressed, it was mainly British people that were buried there back then. And then from the 1970s onwards, many more Turkish Cypriots who passed away, that was their family's choice of burial place. And now, today, there are thousands of Turkish Cypriots buried in Tottenham Park Cemetery. It's not just Turkish Cypriots, but that is the main group. Yeah. There's also a number of Pakistani Muslims, Alevi, Kurdish people buried there. And there's still a sizable English group of people that are buried there, so yeah. So for the Turkish Cypriot community in London, it's quite an important location. And the issue here that I believe that you've been raising, and I've been following this via your Facebook account because you've brought this to our attention on social media, is that, well, a couple of issues. First, it's a privately owned cemetery, and so it's currently being seen maybe as a business venture, although it's full to capacity nearly. There shouldn't be, in your opinion, there shouldn't be any more burials there. And secondly, the upkeep of the cemetery is not to standard, and this is quite a distressing thing for people who have family members buried there. So tell us about the situation of the cemetery now. What is actually, in your opinion, the major issues with the cemetery today? Well, the major issues, I mean, if we just go back one step, just over a year ago, a group of people from our community, led by some prominent community people like Baroness Meralege. We've all got a common interest. We've got loved ones buried there. I myself, my son's buried at Tottenham Park Cemetery.
We formed the Tottenham Park Cemetery Action Group because there were issues that we were very unhappy with, that the wider community are very unhappy with. Issues which have come to light recently, such as unfortunately human bones being found. It's happened on quite a regular occurrence, John. And you know, the police have been called when the bones have been found, and their forensics people have actually confirmed that the bones that were found were human bones. Now that's obviously very distressing for families that are going to visit their loved ones. But there's a huge number of issues. There's issues around health and safety. The graves are packed so tightly together that to navigate your way around, you know, even an able-bodied person will struggle. And a number of people have posted videos on our Facebook page showing the real difficulties that people have. There's weeds, you know, there's
Yeah.
especially in the summer months when weeds are growing, you know, a lot. It's really quite hazardous to navigate your way around. If you're someone who's disabled, you've got absolutely no chance. So it's really upsetting. Just a few weeks ago, the water taps were cut off. There was no water. So people going to visit their family with flowers or to clean the grave wasn't able to do that. People were having to buy their own water and bring it. You know, there's a number of issues. There's people now being buried in the actual paths. There aren't that many paths within the walkway within the cemetery. And we've seen that some burials are now taking place where paths are being dug up. The positioning of the burials are not in line with our religious culture. They're not, some of them aren't being put to face towards Mecca.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a number of issues that our community group is deeply, you know, unhappy about.
It's a very sensitive issue, and it's a shame that it's come to this situation. I asked you whether it was, you know, something to do with the council. I mean, who do you go to? Whose door do you knock on? But you were saying to me that this is actually a privately owned plot of land,
Yep.
the cemetery. So who actually owns it now at the moment?
Well, prior to, I think it's 1982, if memory serves me right, it used to be run as a council-run cemetery. Obviously, the council at the time, I think a number of councils were struggling to maintain cemeteries, and there was an opportunity for them to be taken over privately. And then a company decided to take over Tottenham Park Cemetery, trading as Badgehurst. And as recently as February this year, we believe that a transaction has taken place and the new owners of the cemetery are called Tottenham Park Cemetery Limited. So as you say, it is a private cemetery. There's not very many private cemeteries left in the UK, and you know, there's been a debate within our community and wider than our community that how can you run a private cemetery? It should really be a council run entity, because you can't, you know, anything private, the primary objective is going to be to make profit, right? And that's what we're seeing at Tottenham Park Cemetery. A report was done many, many years ago, and that report talked about the capacity and where the cemetery was in terms of how full it was. And even back then, they reported that it was pretty much full to capacity. It was up to about 85 or 90%. And now it's absolutely, you know, there is no room. And what we're seeing is there are graves that are being damaged. There's pictures that I've sent you. And if you look at the memorials, they're thick marble or thick concrete, depending when they were made. And they've been broken in half. You can see a clean break. So that's not wear and tear. You accept wear and tear.
Yeah.
There's issues with the trees that are not being trimmed, and then if there's a storm, big branches will fall on top of graves. It could fall on top of people, you know. There's a chapel within the cemetery which is gone into disrepair, and they actually had to close the cemetery to do some work, and the chapel is now cordoned off. So there's a lot of issues at the cemetery.
A lot of issues there, and in fact, you're saying there's a historical site, a chapel there, or a religious site, but it's all been left in disrepair, even though it's actually a private location where money is coming in, and so the owners should really, rightly, then be putting money back and looking to upkeep the cemetery. There's nobody on duty there, is there? There's no guards?
There's no guards.
No gardener to cut the grass or to trim the trees?
I think that because of the pressure from our action group, combined with pressure from the local authority, which is Enfield, which I'd like to give a special mention to, because we've been working closely with the London Borough of Enfield. Yeah. And to be fair, the council leader is it's actually a Turkish Cypriot, the first Turkish Cypriot leader of a council, Nesil Çalışkan, and they have put sufficient pressure to make sure, because the weeds got so bad that during the height of summer there had to be a major de-weeding program. So there has been some work done, but it's only when it gets quite unbearable and then the authorities say do something about it. Yeah. So the council's been very, very supportive, and there's a lot of work going on. Our community group, the action group, have spent an awful lot of time, especially certain individuals within our group, doing research, doing our homework. We've been liaising with the government. The Ministry of Justice is aware of the situation, and I understand that an inspector has an expert in cemeteries has just been appointed to go and look at that cemetery and look at all the issues that we've been trying to highlight over the last 12 months or so.
And that's quite a rare occurrence, isn't it? Not very often do you get the ministry involved in this way, but they're actually now sending an inspector to see what's going on personally.
Correct. I believe that it's only ever happened once before on record, so it is something that is very rare, and it goes to show the amount of work that's been done, the amount of time that the government and the council have invested in this, because if you don't provide the necessary evidence to highlight the concerns, then clearly there won't be any justification for the government to go down this road. Yeah. So we've provided that justification, we've provided that evidence, and the government are sufficiently concerned to have appointed an inspector, and that individual is an expert in cemeteries who will know what they're looking for. They'll obviously be checking the evidence that we've provided, and then they will have powers to make recommendations. So we're hoping that some of those powers might include the cemetery being closed to future burials because it's full.
As you were saying, even the paths are being used as a burial site now, which is not acceptable at all. Even if you can't, you're saying you can't even access it easily, and whatever access to it is now being used to bury people. Obviously, there are still some plots that have been reserved by other family members who want to be buried next to their loved ones. But aside from that, there should be no new burials. And I did ask you off air that are there other alternatives for, let's say, Turkish Cypriots who pass away in the UK? They don't have to use Tottenham Park, do they? They can be buried in other cemeteries.
It's an emotive subject, Jan. Yeah. If you've got a loved one, say for example, a woman whose husband has been buried at the cemetery. Yeah. A dying wish would normally want that individual to be laid to rest next to their husband, their partner, and so we totally respect that. But obviously, where there isn't a reserved plot, obviously that has to be honoured. But we have to educate our community that there are other alternatives out there, other places that uphold the values that you'd expect when you go to a cemetery to visit your loved ones, where they're resting in a place where there's dignity and respect. Places like Lavender Hill in Enfield, places like Trent Park in Enfield as well. Yeah. These are really well-kept, well-respected places of rest, which is complete contrast to what our family, our loved ones have to go through at Tottenham Park Cemetery.
It is a very sad situation, but I would like to point out, and you sent me this photograph as well, that we actually can go back to World War I and World War II, because there are war graves lost in Tottenham Park Cemetery, and lest we forget, but you actually held, in your opinion, one of the first memorial remembrance ceremonies on the 11th of November, Remembrance Sunday, outside or in the premises of the cemetery. It says here, from World War I, there are 10 military graves from the UK, including 1 boy of the Royal Navy, and 14 unnamed Germans and 3 Austrian civilian internees. And then we have from World War II, there are 28 military graves from the UK and 3 unnamed Germans. May you all rest in peace. And so this is something that not affects just the Turkish Cypriot or the Muslim community in the area, but actually we have war heroes that should be respected, lest we forget. And so that was a very important thing that you did, wasn't it, on Remembrance Sunday?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we're very proud of. You know, we've been in touch with the War Graves Commission as well, because, you know, Remembrance Sunday is quite rightly a very important issue for the whole of the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
You know, the whole of the Commonwealth, even, because
everyone.
You know, because anyone who lost someone in the war, or my dada was in the Cyprus Regiment. I mean, he was captured by the Nazis in Crete. He wasn't actually in active service for very long before he got caught, and then he was a prisoner of war for about 4 years. But putting that to one side, as you rightly say, there's war dead at Tottenham Park Cemetery, and we don't even know where they're buried. I mean, we know from the burial registers, but the locations, there's nothing that you can go and pay your respects to these fallen heroes.
Yeah.
Their graves are lost, probably buried over by other graves. And that's a real tragedy. So we decided that we would honour these men, and on the 11th of November we gathered outside the gates of the cemetery. We laid a wreath of poppies. We had a special banner made out honouring every single person, their names, certainly the individuals that we were aware of, and we held prayers. We held a minute's silence, and we said some words to one of these individuals. And I think it's a real stain on the owners. They would have been aware, if they had done their due diligence, which I'm sure they did, that there are war dead present at Tottenham Park Cemetery. And the fact that you can't even go and pay your respects, you don't know where they're located, is quite disgraceful.
But you do have, obviously, documents. You know who is there. There must be. I mean, I find it, unfathomable that somewhere as modern and as up to date as London in the UK, that there could be such a location like this which is being left unkempt. But as you say, there aren't many private cemeteries in the UK, so this is one sort of exception. It's a shame, but also it's sort of like something that is close to people's heart here as well, because you said to me, I lived in the UK, I might have relatives buried at the cemetery, and who knows, we have lots of expats, lots of Turkish Cypriots who used to live in the UK who have come here, maybe their families are buried there, and they don't know about the situation at the moment. This is something that I only found out via what you were doing. I know that's been in the press in the UK, hasn't it? You have had some media coverage, haven't you?
We've had brilliant media coverage. I think as a Turkish Cypriot community group, I think we've, not that I want to sort of blow our trumpets, but we've been very effective in making sure that the British media have managed to help us to build awareness around this issue. BBC, ITV, London Live, Baroness Meral Ece has done various radio interviews. A number of our community group members have done interviews with the media. It's been covered in a lot of the local newspapers. And I think the issue around the war dead as well is a real hook for some of the you know, more the more national media outlets, you know, because it's just unacceptable in this day and age. My village in Mehmetçik, in Galatya, we've got 2 cemeteries. You've got the old one, right, which is actually, you know, hardly upkept because, you know, no one's being buried there now. Tottenham Park Cemetery reminds me of the old cemetery in our village. You know, it's that shocking. You go to our new cemetery, which is near the football stadium, and it's beautiful. Everything's laid out row by row. And
which is how it should be.
Yeah, our loved ones are treated with dignity and respect. It's a respectful place to go and visit, and you know, you're not going to worry about falling over and smacking your head on a gravestone. And
ironically, here in the TRNC, we have a British cemetery in Girne, which has been, you know, thanks to lots of hardworking people and the Royal British Legion Cairene branch, it's actually been, you know, well looked after. There's a big memorial with over 300 names, nearly 400 names of the dead linked to Cyprus during the wars. And so, you know, here we are in North Cyprus doing our best to keep, you know, the cemetery for lest we forget, and then you've got the lest we forget the people who died in war in the UK, yep. And they are, you know, you're saying that the graves are missing, or you don't even know where they are.
That's right. That's right, and you know that memorial place in Girne, which rightly honours the 371 people who died in the Cyprus conflict. You know, that is 1,000,000 miles away from what is being done in Tottenham Park Cemetery. And, you know, hopefully some of the people watching this show will take an interest. And, you know, even if it's not going to be for the local community who have family buried there, you know, maybe the Royal Legion can maybe get involved, because our arms are open to people to come on board and to help support our campaign. And a big part of it is getting some more respect for those war heroes, in addition to our loved ones who are laid to rest.
As you said, you were quite effective with getting media attention, and you sent me some placards, a photograph of placards that you were actually using. I mean, it says here, peace for our deceased. When do we want it? Now. Saygı nerede? Now, you actually used some Turkish placards as well. Where is the respect? Also, huzur yok, there's no peace, and it just goes on. You have done a very good, effective campaign, and the action group, most of the members have got loved ones buried at the cemetery, and in fact also you were saying that you were all volunteers, aren't you?
Yes.
There's nothing to be gained from this. You're all giving up your private time to fight this cemetery, even though there is a private company who is making money, or who is, you know, just keeping the cemetery going. Where this is not right, is it, in any respect? How can now our viewers help you and your action group in your cause? Because I know that you are trying to maybe in the future actually seize control of the cemetery and, you know, buy it back for the community. What's happening, Fevzi?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of our aspirations moving forward. You know, in terms of what people can do to support us, obviously we've got a very active campaign going, and we're keen for people to get on board, spread the word, spread awareness, because like you said, there's so many people buried in that cemetery, and whilst here in Cyprus, here in North Cyprus, we're in a different country, but there will be so many people living here that will have loved ones, people that they know, that are buried in Tottenham Park Cemetery. So there is an interest for people here watching this programme today.
Do you have any figures for the number of Turkish Cypriots buried at all there? I mean, do we have a rough idea? Are we going into hundreds or thousands?
No, thousands, definitely.
Thousands, really?
Yeah, definitely thousands, yeah.
So there must be people living here who have relatives buried.
I think the figures that I saw, if you go from 1982, and these are very approximate figures, but if I remember the numbers correctly, there's a few, even if there's, you know, 3 or 4 burials a week over a 52-week period in a year. That there's in the region of 300 to 400 burials a year. So if you go back to 1982, maths was never my strong point.
Yeah. Well, get the calculator out. But
you're talking, quite a few thousand people that have been laid to rest, and certainly from that period, it's predominantly been Turkish Cypriots who've been buried there.
So this is something that affects our community quite deeply when we think about the connotations, because I'm thinking about cemeteries and burials, and in our culture, in the Muslim culture, we go to the cemetery quite a lot to pay respect, especially during the Bayram religious festivals. It's time to go and pay respect. We pour water over the grave. We try to make it look good, pay respect to our deceased. So it's actually quite an important thing. People might think, oh, so what? It's a cemetery. The dead are dead and gone. But actually, it's not like that. I mean, unfortunately, you have a baby son there, and so for you, it must be a very sensitive issue, because you want to go there, and you must go there every now and then to go and pay your respect to your son, maybe on the day that he died, or.
That's right, and I've got other cousins there. And friends who I've known who have sadly passed away. So it's close to a lot of people's hearts, and it's just not acceptable to be going to a cemetery and seeing that level of there's disrepair in terms of the environment. The overgrown trees, the weeds, the uneven paths. They've recently put signs up saying watch your step, uneven path, which is nice of them to give us a warning, but it's not on. I mean, you asked what people can do in terms of helping us. We've poured a lot of effort into getting the council on board, into getting the government on board, and it would be good if people continue to put the pressure on the Ministry of Justice. If they've got any links to Enfield Council, because normally you need to have a link to a council to.
Right.
Although if you have someone in the cemetery, that is link enough, to be honest.
Of course.
So, to write to them, to keep lobbying them, to make sure that they are aware of the strength of our community's feelings, the issue of the war dead as well, and hopefully with the inspector come in and doing the inspection and whatever recommendations he's going to make, we may well hopefully be a step nearer to having ownership of that cemetery, because there can't be any more burials there. It's full to bursting.
It's full to bursting, and the current owners, as you say, maybe see it as a business, because it is a private cemetery. So does that mean that you are also trying to raise funds to maybe buy back to purchase the cemetery back, or do you think that Enfield Council should be the one to take over the control of the cemetery? You have a crowdfunding page, don't you?
We do, and I will send you the link so you can include it with this programme.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of options moving forward. Councils have various powers, and one of those powers is around a compulsory purchase order. So if there is sufficient justification, in theory, a council can invoke those compulsory purchase orders and take the cemetery, purchase the cemetery off the owners and hand it to us. And we can then explore funding through lottery avenues, because the lotteries fund helps lots of worthy causes, and I think our cause would fall into that category. So because it's going to need, it's a massive project, John. We've been fighting really hard to bring dignity and respect to our loved ones who laid to rest there, and this is just part of the battle, because inshallah we'll be able to acquire it in some way, shape or form through the appropriate process. But then if we're successful in that will be a wonderful achievement. But then there will be the whole process moving forward of upkeeping it, putting into place those things that you talk about in terms of security. There's no guards there, there's no security there. The gates are left open 24 hours a day, from what we're aware.
Yeah.
The chapel was being used for all sorts of, you know, wrong things before. You know, it needs an awful lot of work, but that's something we're committed to doing.
Well, it's a long journey ahead of you if you do get control, and I hope that you do. I hope that the right people get to look after the cemetery, and that the cemetery is restored to its former glory, or at least, you know, restored so that people can be happy and content saying, yes, you know, those who are laid to rest there are laid to rest in peace. You know, we always say rest in peace, but are these people resting in peace? And at the moment, it doesn't look like as if they're resting in peace, not with what we can see with the photographs and the state of the cemetery. You mentioned before, off air as well, that there might be an event coming up next year, a ball in the UK. So it seems like this action group that you've got going with your fellow friends, your fellow members, you'll be starting to maybe do some fundraising events. Is that what you're hoping to do?
Yeah, that's all. That's part of our fundraising activities. We've got a balo planned for Friday the 1st of March. It might feel like a long way off, but that will come around
very soon.
We know it. It's at the Grand Palace Banqueting Suite in Wood Green, and it's going to be a great night. We're hoping to have some fabulous prizes donated, hopefully a few holidays to North Cyprus, and some special auctions around Galatasaray and Fenerbahce signed football kits.
Wow.
So yeah, we're hoping that it's going to be a great night, and we're also hoping that it's going to be an opportunity for the younger people in some of the families to there's going to be like a spoken word session where people will be able to go to the microphone and read a poem dedicated to their nene, dede, or brother, whatever.
Yeah.
So, you know, it promises to be a special night, and tickets are only £40, and obviously it's going to all go to a very special cause.
Very, very important cause, and I wish you the best. How can people here in the TRNC help you? You're going to give me the link, or we're going to write down the link to the crowdfunding side. But there actually is a Facebook page, isn't there, for this cause? So can you read out the name for those who are on social media? If you are media savvy, then you can go on Facebook to the Tottenham Park
Cemetery Montague Road Forum is an active forum. They can go on there. They can see there's a lot of eyewitness accounts in terms of people from our community who have gone and, you know, aired their own experience in terms of how upset they've been, in terms of sometimes their inability to even get to the location of where their loved ones are resting. And I think the crowdfunding link is also on that page, but we will provide that link for you so you can put that on the show.
And so people can make donations online, very easy, from the comfort of their own homes.
Yeah, I believe there's a PayPal facility built into the crowdfunding, so and you can leave a message of support for the campaign as well. Which
is very, very important. We should all come together for this cause. If somebody here thinks or are unsure that they have a loved one buried there, if they gave a name, could they? Do you have records?
Well, it isn't our job to obviously hold the records. That's the job of the owners, and that's a sore subject in itself. You know, because we understand that one of the burial registrars is missing, allegedly destroyed in a fire in the hut. If you go into the cemetery, there's this hut. What on earth they're being kept there for? Surely, you know, a vital document like that should be somewhere really secure. But yeah, there are legally a cemetery has to hold burial records, especially now that they have. When you get a plot and your loved one's buried, normally there's a lease, and the lease periods vary. But for example, my son's lease is 50 years, so when we get to 50 years, we will be notified, and then you'll be invited to renew your lease. So they need to have these records, and they're obviously contacting people who have loved ones. So I think the best thing to do would be for people to contact, it would be the liquidators who are running all of the admin at the moment.
Right.
You know, but I think if someone was buried there, that the family would tend to know. But if someone wanted to know, they'd obviously need to have a name, and the period when that individual died for it to be cross-checked.
Well, I'm sure that you could help online with them if they contact you or the group via the forum. Then I'm sure all their questions will be answered. And again, more information, different stories, the state of the cemetery, photographs, etc., are all on the forum, all on Facebook. So if people want to find out more about this subject, then they can do. It's a very, very sad, very serious subject, but I do hope that you get the response that you want from the Ministry of Justice and after the inspection. When is the inspection being carried out, by the way?
I don't know the precise details.
In the new year, maybe?
I honestly don't know, but I expect it's going to to be quite soon. So obviously when there's an update, I'll forward an update on to you so you can share that with your
please do.
Listeners.
Please do share the information with us, Fevzi. Once again, thank you very much for coming in today to the BRTK studios on this very short visit to the island. Have a good time with your family, with your loved ones, and send our regards back to everyone in the UK, to our community back in the UK. Well done to everyone involved with this action campaign, and especially to...
Can I just say a quick tribute to my fellow volunteers, because
of course
they really are a special group of people. What we've managed to do is, I think, quite exceptional as a community group. And we're also being supported by Her Excellency Oya Tunjalu, the TRNC representative in Bedford Square. So it's quite appropriate that we should recognise that. So we are getting, we've managed to get support from various quarters, but primarily I think our group, the individuals on that, everyone has been chipping in and giving up a lot of their time, and I take my hat off to all of them.
Well done to all of you involved. Thank you very much, Fevzi, for coming in today, and I wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you, John.
Thanks a lot. And with that, we have come to the end of this edition of A Cup of Conversation with Fevzi Hüssein over here from the UK, on a special visit to his family, but also on a special mission here. Please, if you want to find out more, go to the Tottenham Park Cemetery Forum on Facebook, and I'm sure you can share your sympathies with the people who are working hard for this cause. Until next time we meet in the BRTK studios in Lefkoshire, take care and go well. Bye-bye.